I'll pass on now to Eric Pyle from SolarCity, talking a little bit more about democratization, this time of your energy, not just your money. Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks to the Sustainable Business Network for organising this. Really appreciate it. Can you see my slides? Are they up? Here they come. Solar Zero. So I work for a company called SolarCity. I'm Director of Public Affairs and Policy. And that's why I didn't do my slides, because Alan's a technical kind of guy. What are we about? Thank you for the first slide there. Our mission is to accelerate New Zealand's transition towards 100%. Oops, can we go back? That's the one. And we want to lower the cost of energy for Kiwi. So we really want to hit that sweet spot using technology of more renewable, better tech, and lower costs. And it's all driven by innovation. We're a mission-driven company. One of the things that gets people to work every day is wanting to do something about climate change. And that's a really, really strong focus of our business. Next slide, please. So what are we about? We're about solar panels, obviously. SolarCity, you'd expect that. But we now only do batteries with solar panels, because we see, if you go back, we see batteries as being absolutely critical to the power system of the future. We've got about 3,000 batteries in market that are operating currently. That's one of the biggest collection of batteries owned by a single company in the world. And certainly in terms of the number of batteries, in terms of the size of the power system, we are certainly one of the world leaders in the deployment of batteries. We want to make customers save money, as I said, so we've got a price protection. We guarantee that from day one, you will not pay more. In fact, you will pay less for your electricity with our solar system than you would from the grid. And what's really cool about our system is that it's inflation proof. So what happens is you pay a fixed fee for 20 years for our solar and battery system. And that does not increase with inflation. So in fact, the amount of power you get from your solar and battery system decreases in real terms over time. So the power gets cheaper and cheaper. And we aim to meet about 60, 70, in some cases even more, a higher percentage of household electricity. We have a wonderful bit of technology. I will show it to you here. It doesn't look terribly much, but what we're doing is putting a smart little computer into every house. And really the future has arrived. The future of the power system, a few years ago, people talked about your fridge talking to this, talking to that, and hot water and EV charging, all working together. Through this little magic box here, that's all starting to happen. And the net result of that is not just cheaper power for our customers, but it's actually a more efficient power system, because what we do is we flatten out the peaks. And so you can put a lot more electrons, a lot more power through the power system, and you don't have to build new poles, new wires, new transformers, and all of that sort of stuff. We're going to electrify the economy. And the question is, how can we do that in the most efficient way? And it's technology like this little thing here in people's houses that will enable us to run electric vehicles, electrify our industry, achieve our climate change goals in the most financially efficient and cheapest possible ways that we can. Next slide, please. So, what do our customers get? They get cleaner, and they get cheaper, and they get smarter ways to power their home. In a nutshell, as I said, we guarantee savings from year one. A large chunk of the power bill is fixed and decreases in real terms, and we own all the equipment. So if it goes wrong, it's our problem, and it's our problem for the 20 years, and then presumably customers will sign up again for another 20 years. So it's our problem forever, which means the customer gets advantages of software upgrades, a whole software platform that we're building out over time to optimize the whole system. Not only that, it's really cool too, is that customers get security during power outages. The number of positive comments we get from our customers when there's a power outage, ranging from, gosh, there was a power outage I heard on the news, I didn't even know, to, oh yeah, there was a power outage and we invited our neighbours around for a cup of tea and all the rest of it. So what our batteries do is when the power goes out at the home islands and key circuits like fridges, freezers, lights, can often put the jug on, stay on, And like I say, for some people, they go through a power cut, they don't even know that they've had one. Next slide, please. So in terms of the future, this is a quote from our founder, and his vision, and it's our mission, is to be the generation, oops, can we go back, that really tackles climate change. Let's be the generation that says, right, let's do something about climate change. Let's listen to the children marching. Let's really go for it in terms of climate change. And there we are in terms of, if we could go to the final slide. That's our contact details there, solarcity.co.nz. And there's my email address, and I'm probably under the 5 minutes.
Right, indeed, swift work, fantastic. I'll just bring myself back up. Great stuff, Eric. Thank you very much for that. We've run through how it all operates. What were kind of the thinking behind it going to the people? So, I mean, how has the technology changed to make it much more accessible now? Because I think back sort of 10 years, it was very much sort of a bit nichey. It was just the real enthusiast, but we're seeing it pop up on big developments like you saw in your presentation there. What's made that change possible?
Really, it's a combination of things, but the dominant thing is just the technology's just got better and better, like all technology has. You know, you remember the first mobile phones we had that were bricks. The cost of solar panels has declined, the cost of batteries has declined, and really the processing power that you can now put in the system, which is really the magic and the secret sauce of the thing, that has increased exponentially, of course, as we know with Moore's law. So it's a combination of all of those sorts of things. And you're quite right. What's happened is that this has become affordable for people. We've innovated in terms of the technology, but we've also innovated in terms of the financial model. And what we've done is taken the barrier, the upfront cost barrier away. So there's no, you know, $10,000, $20,000 or more for a solar and battery system. There's none of that. It's just a straight monthly fee. So we take that big financial hurdle out. And what we're seeing is uptake right across the socioeconomic spectrum. It's pretty flat. Both in areas that are less well off and areas that are very well off. So we've really enabled middle New Zealand to get access to this technology through our financial innovation.
Yeah, and it's all over the country. The like weather conditions, enough sun wherever you happen to be, Dunedin to the coast.
Yep, pretty much. New Zealand is actually a surprisingly sunny place, and I say that sitting in Wellington in the wonderful sunshine of Plymouth, just north of Wellington today.
And there was a lot of complexities around sort of buyback, you know, the buyback power companies, how much money they were willing to pay back when you put in the system. Do the batteries kind of get over that kind of complexity of trying to store power and then sell it back, and do you just deal with that for people? Because I remember when people were having systems before, there was a whole hoo-ha about the company won't buy my power when I'm not using it, and it got quite a little bit political, a little bit tricky there.
Yeah, no, and that's the purpose of the battery. So during the day when it's sunny, the battery stores the surplus solar power, and then when you come home at night and cook dinner and you're using a lot of power, the battery provides that power again. That drains the battery, and then at night when power's cheap and there's a lot of spare capacity on the system, we actually charge our batteries up again. So our aim is not to go off grid and take people off grid. I mean, sure, for rural communities where it's really expensive to get the power and special cases like that. But our aim is to stay connected to the grid. Our aim is to support the grid and make the grid run much more efficiently than what it is at the moment.
You throw in an electric car in there as well, and you've got quite a robust system, for your transport needs as well.
Absolutely, and I certainly have an EV, and absolutely it all, you know, it's the electrification of the economy that we're trying to drive, and electricity demand is going to increase a lot. We're going to kind of need a lot of the solar stuff, a lot of wind farms to meet the needs to replace all the fossil fuels in the economy.
And do you work commercially as well as residentially?
We have and we do, yes.
Right. So if you've got a big business out there as well, and the dynamics are a little different, aren't they? Because you're using the power much more during the day, you can use the power kind of straight in pretty much. You're not, the battery use is a bit less, but it's all a slightly different beast, in the commercial setting.
Yes, absolutely. And we're certainly now very familiar with residential scale batteries. Eventually they'll get cheap enough and good enough and so on to work more in commercial enterprises. That's probably a little bit further away than certainly where we are at the moment with residential, where batteries are all good. They work very well.
Mm. And how are you seeing that in being addressed in terms of some of the concerns around the life of batteries and also the end of life, what we do with them when they're finished up?
So in terms of batteries, our sort of vision for that is that they start off life with us, and then they'll go off to data centers. I mean, batteries don't actually really die. They just sort of get weaker and weaker. And so they've got a good second life. They'll be with us for 10 or 15 years or so, and then they'll probably go to a data center for 10 or 15 years. What we'd like to do eventually is take them out of vehicles and get them out of vehicles into our system, and then off to data centers, and then ultimately to be recycled. So they have a very, very long life. And I think there's about 10,000 tonnes of batteries on our roads at the moment in our electric vehicles at about 0.5% of the fleet. So there's going to be a lot of lithium ion in the economy. And it's valuable stuff. It's going to be treated, I think, like copper. You know, I read a stat somewhere that about 80% of the copper that's ever been mined, or 80 or 90% of the copper that's ever been mined, is still being used because it is just so valuable. And lithium ion will be like that too. We'll just find more and more ways to store electricity, use it, shift electricity around. We've never really had that ability. We've only just produced electricity and used it as it was produced, and vice versa.
And are you actively involved in some of that recycling and some of the research going into that?
We're certainly looking at it. At the moment, there's not a huge amount of batteries coming out of the system because it's so new. I mean, you know, we've got 20,000 electric vehicles in New Zealand. The only real lithium at the moment, or lithium-ion batteries that you can get out of that, is from crashed vehicles, you know, because they just haven't reached that point in their life yet that the batteries are up for replacement. So that's definitely a topic for the future.
Very cool. And you know, that sort of circular economy in lithium would be fantastic, to keep it all in the system, and all those other kind of minerals and all the resources is something we look at SBN.
Yeah, and I think once the lithium gets into the economy, it's not really going to leave, because we're just going to find all these different uses in a circular economy. Yeah.
Fantastic. And these days, are all kind of solar powered systems and batteries created equal, or are there certain things people need to be looking out for, sort of certifications or kind of schemes or stickers they're looking out for the best ones?
Well,
other than your brand, obviously, but you know.
Yeah, I'd say our brand, of course.
Right.
I looked after all of those sorts of things. No, but I think really people have got to look to the future and ask the question, you know, one of the questions they need to ask, can this battery, has it got the software and the ability to communicate with the Wi-Fi, connect to the power system, so that your house actually becomes an integral part of the power system? That's going to create greater and greater value for you in the future. Also, if the power goes out, does the battery support your household? I mean, outages in some parts of the country are more frequent than others, but that's one of the key things that we want to deliver our customers: much more reliable electricity.
And there's been a lot of talk about the impact of rolling out, especially localized solar and other renewables, into the grid, and the kind of maneuverings of the energy systems around that, the energy companies kind of saying, well, we sustain the grid. Is that still happening? Is there still kind of discussion about how to sort of run this infrastructure long term?
Well, I think the electricity industry is going through quite a major change at the moment. To some extent, I think if Thomas Edison turned up, he would look at bits of the electricity system and go, yeah, I kind of recognize that. You know, it hasn't changed a lot in 100, 120, 140 years or so. I think in another 20 years, if Edison turned up, he'd say, wow, this really does look quite different. You've got solar, you've got batteries, you've got ICT controls, communication, the system's being run differently, you've got democratization of energy, and we're just on the cusp of that. It's just starting to happen. So it's a big change. It's like, you know, going from when you got videos on CDs to Netflix. That's the kind of change that the electricity industry is just starting to go through. Because it's a big infrastructure industry, it's going to take a little bit longer than some of the changes that we've seen in other areas.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those changes that will feel like it's taken a long time and then feel like it was very sudden when it's, you know, that kind of peak will hit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what we think.
But very much seems to be not so much a thing of the future anymore, but a thing of the right now. And your company, among others, is making that really accessible for people so they can do it today.
Look, 10 years ago, in a previous life, I set up something called a Smart Grids Working Group, and we sort of plotted a vision for the power system of the future, and it had this kind of technology. And people were pretty skeptical, you know, would it ever become cheap enough, modular enough, and all of that sort of stuff. The future's arrived. Okay, the future really has arrived. We're starting to see the digitization and the democratization and the decarbonisation of our energy system.
Fantastic. Exciting times, and especially with the sort of resilience challenges we've had recently, it sort of makes people think about what they've got available to them local and close to home, eh?
It does indeed, and with more working from home and so on, and who knows what patterns of behaviour we'll go back to post COVID-19. I suspect a lot of people have enjoyed working from home. Certainly, some of the reports we've had in our business and other businesses as the level of communications increase. As people work from home more, do they need more solar, more batteries, more resilience in the home?
Fantastic. Thanks very much for your time, Eric. Thanks very much for
Thank
coming
you.
along, and thanks to